Even the most strident death penalty fans, as myself, we don't want to see an innocent person executed ever. And if that could ever be prevented, why, of course. And if we're going to err on the side of killing too many or not killing enough, well, I'm enough of a softie that I would rather let a guilty man not get killed than kill an innocent man accidentally. And so even with that orientation in my approach to the death penalty, this next case, or this case that you've been hearing about for about a week or so now here in Texas, it keeps getting weirder and weirder. Javier Pérez is back on the James Show. And look, without even getting into the details of the case and whether or not this guy is innocent or guilty, there's a lot of legal questions that I have about the sort of legal machinations that halted this execution last week, because I was under the impression not only the governor could do that, but they found some sort of weird loophole, Javier.
That's right. It really is. I had to read several articles to kind of understand this. Really I don't know if it's completely unprecedented, but certainly unusual path for this story to kind of get where it was. The state legislature getting involved, which is highly unusual, seeking to have Mr. Roberson testify, I think in part just to buy some time after they heard a full day of testimony from other experts and whatnot. And so it's a kind of a civil remedy in terms of we want to hear what this guy has to say, and they can kind of put a pause on the other proceedings to do so. I think there's something like 80 legislators from both sides of the aisles, the far extremes of either side, had signed on to this effort. So
that's another interesting part about this. I can't say this is some level of political hackery because it seems fairly bipartisan. What are these people alleging? What, they think he didn't kill his daughter?
Right. So the cause of death is what that issue. So he was convicted originally because of the shaken baby syndrome diagnosis, right?
Right.
Which was this, I guess, kind of medical theory, scientific theory about why babies sometimes die. And in this case, that's kind of what the determination was, is that's why his daughter died. But since then, there's been a lot of research and I guess, people kind of walking back, the scientific community walking back that syndrome or that diagnosis and really questioning whether that was the cause of death. The theory here in Roberson's case is that his daughter passed away related to complications with her having pneumonia because she was medically vulnerable, had a lot of health problems. So that's kind of where the question lies now that we have more science on the issue.
Yeah, and so that caught me by the heartstrings when I heard it earlier. He got convicted under junk science and the cause of death is under question. But then I go read up on it, and there were like 17 visible injuries on the baby, lacerations and bruises and getting beat upside her head and whatnot. And even if it's not technically shaken baby syndrome, I still don't see the evidence that she didn't die from abuse.
Right. So that is, that's a good point, because that's the point that the prosecutors are making is even if, shaken baby syndrome is not as kind of solid or clear as we thought it was, it doesn't disprove that him injuring the daughter caused her death, right? It doesn't disprove it. It just kind of makes you question whether it was this syndrome or not.
Yeah, so it's probably like blunt force trauma syndrome or whatever, and there were still witnesses. There's still all kinds of evidence piled up. And then you probably know more about this, Javier, the weird human behavior about how many people recant some of their testimony. Witnesses and other cases throughout history will recant their testimony if they find out it'll lead to another person dying. And I thought that's sort of an interesting human variable to throw in there, is the fact that, if people have even just like a 1% doubt, they've often changed their stories to prevent an execution because they don't want to be the responsible party in someone's death.
Right. I mean, I think that's fascinating that, you were this sure unless you know the stakes. But, right, the criminal standard for a conviction is beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think that's where this case lives, and why it's gotten so much kind of support across the political spectrum and others in terms of not putting to death someone who we're not sure did it. And I think a lot of that is, there's been, I think I've read something about there's been like 8 cases of people put to death for shaken baby syndrome, and 2 of them have been exonerated after the fact. So I think there's a question about whether this is a solid enough basis to use the death penalty. But I think it's an interesting question, absolutely. And prosecution is sticking to its guns.
All right. I appreciate hearing from a lawyer on this. If you want to find more of Javier, or maybe go to his website and judge him based on his appearance, crainbrogdon.com. That's why most people go, Javier, right? They just want to see what we look like. crainbrogdon.com. Hey, here's another weird human behavior, Javier. If you go, if I go look at the Google Trends for me, the second most search term for the James Parker Show is James Parker's wife. People want to know what Miss Parker looks like, apparently, and Google just tells me there's a lot of creeps out there. Thank you, Javier. I gotta go.